Dr. Phil held an envelope in his hand. The entire studio, cameras, crew, audience, family, fell into absolute silence. Everyone in that room knew that what was inside that envelope would change this family forever. What no one expected was how devastating the truth would actually be. "Stop the tape," Dr. Phil said quietly. The cameras kept rolling, but something in his voice made everyone freeze. 3 hours earlier, the Martinez family had walked into the Dr. Phil studio believing they were there to resolve a simple estate dispute. Robert Martinez, 68, had passed away 6 months ago, leaving behind a $4.2 million fortune from his successful construction business. His will was being contested. What seemed like a straightforward family disagreement was about to explode into something no one saw coming. Sarah Martinez, 42, sat in the signature brown leather chair, her hands trembling slightly. Next to her, her brother David, 38, kept checking his phone nervously. Their mother, Elena, 73, sat rigid and silent, clutching a tissue. Across from them sat someone they'd only met once before, a woman named Claire Thompson, 45, who claimed to have a connection to their father. The show had started normally. Dr. Phil introduced the case with his characteristic directness. "We're here today because Robert Martinez left a will that has torn his family apart. Sarah and David believe their father's estate should be divided equally among them and their mother. But Claire Thompson says she has documents that prove otherwise." Sarah spoke first, her voice shaking with controlled anger. "My father built that company with his bare hands. He worked 70-hour weeks for 40 years. Everything he did was for us, for his family. And now this woman," she gestured toward Claire, "shows up out of nowhere claiming she deserves a piece of what he built." The audience murmured in agreement. It seemed like an open and shut case of someone trying to exploit a grieving family. Dr. Phil turned to Claire. "You say you have documentation. What's your connection to Robert Martinez?" Claire's voice was steady, but her hands betrayed her nervousness. "Dr. Phil, I don't want their money. I never asked for any of this. But Robert he was my father too." The studio erupted. Sarah jumped to her feet. "That's a lie. My father would never." "Sit down." Dr. Phil's voice cut through the chaos like a knife. Not loud, but absolute. Sarah sat. What happened in the next 60 seconds would become one of the most shared moments in Dr. Phil history. Dr. Phil walked to the center of the stage, away from his usual position. "I've been doing this show for 21 years. I've seen thousands of families. And I can tell when someone is lying." He paused, looking directly at Claire. "I don't think you're lying." Elena, who had been silent until now, made a sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Everyone turned to look at her. "Mrs. Martinez?" "Dr. Phil said gently. "Is there something you need to tell your children?" Elena's face crumbled. 43 years of secrets were about to come pouring out. "Your father." Elena's voice was barely audible. "Your father had another life. Before we were married. There was a woman in Houston. I knew about her. I made him choose." Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Sarah's face had gone completely white. David stood up, then sat back down, unable to process what he was hearing. Claire was crying silently. Dr. Phil pulled over a chair and sat directly in front of Elena. The cameras zoomed in, but he didn't seem to notice or care. In that moment, it wasn't a TV show. It was a therapy session happening in front of 5 million viewers. "Elena, how long have you known?" "Since before David was born. Robert told me everything when we got engaged. He said he had a daughter in Houston. Her mother, Claire's mother, didn't want him involved. He sent money every month through a lawyer. He never met her. But he never forgot her." The studio was completely silent except for the sound of people crying. Not just the family. Audience members. Even some of the crew. Claire spoke, her voice breaking. "My mother told me about him when I was 16. She showed me pictures. She said he wanted to be there but couldn't. She never told me why. She looked at Elena. I'm not here for money. I'm here because 6 months ago, I got a letter from him, dated 1 week before he died. Dr. Phil held up his hand. Hold on. He turned to his producer off camera. Bring me the letter. Now. For 30 seconds, no one moved. The only sound was the air conditioning. Then a production assistant walked onto the stage and handed Dr. Phil a sealed envelope. This was the moment. The envelope. The one Dr. Phil had been holding when he'd said, "Stop the tape." Claire gave this to us during pre-production. Dr. Phil explained to the family. She asked that it be read on the show, in front of all of you, because she didn't trust herself to do it alone. He looked at Sarah and David. This letter is from your father. Written 2 weeks before he had his heart attack. Do you want to hear what he had to say? Sarah was crying now, but she nodded. David couldn't speak. He just stared at the envelope. Dr. Phil opened it slowly. His hands, usually so steady, fumbled slightly with the seal. He began to read. To my daughter Claire, whom I've never held but have loved every day of your life. I am a coward. That is the truth, and I've lived with it for 45 years. When your mother told me she was pregnant, I was scared. I was 23, broke, and terrified. I chose the easy path. I walked away. By the time I realized what I'd done, it was too late. Your mother had moved on. She told me to stay away, that you deserved better than a father who had abandoned you. Dr. Phil's voice caught. He paused, looked up at Claire, then continued. I built a business. I made millions. I have 2 beautiful children who love me. And every single day, I think about you. I think about your first steps, your first words, your first day of school, all the moments I missed. I sent money because it was all I could do. It was never enough. It will never be enough. The camera captured something rare, Dr. Phil wiping his own eyes. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And I need to tell the truth, even if I'm too much of a coward to do it while I'm alive. To Sarah and David, I love you both more than life itself. But I failed you by keeping this secret. And I failed Claire by not having the courage to be her father. Dr. Phil stopped reading. He looked at the family. Then he did something he'd never done in 2 decades on air. He folded the letter, put it back in the envelope, and walked off the stage. The cameras kept rolling, but there was no show anymore. Just the family, broken open, trying to figure out how to breathe. A production assistant started to follow Dr. Phil, but he waved her off. He walked to the edge of the stage, off camera, and stood there for almost a full minute. When he came back, his eyes were red. I need everyone to understand something, he said, addressing the audience now, not just the family. This is not entertainment. This is 3 people's lives. And what happens next matters more than ratings, more than viral clips, more than any of that. He sat down between Sarah and Claire. Not in his usual chair. On the floor. Literally on the stage floor, looking up at them. What happened in the next 5 minutes was never supposed to air. The network tried to cut it. Dr. Phil refused. Sarah, look at me. Dr. Phil's voice was soft but commanding. Your father loved you. That doesn't change. David, your father loved you. That doesn't change. But he also loved Claire. And keeping that love secret destroyed him. The question now is, are you going to let it destroy you too? Sarah was sobbing now, her whole body shaking. How am I supposed to just accept that my entire life was built on a lie? You're not, Dr. Phil said simply. You're supposed to be angry. You're supposed to feel betrayed. But eventually you have to decide if you're going to be defined by what your father did wrong, or by what you can do right. He turned to Claire. And you. You didn't ask for any of this. But you're here. And these are your siblings whether any of you like it or not. The question is, what kind of family are you going to choose to be? Then Dr. Phil pulled out another envelope. No one had known about this one. Your father's will, Dr. Phil said, left everything to Elena, Sarah, and David. But he also left instructions with his lawyer. Instructions that were sealed until 6 months after his death. He opened this envelope. He set up a trust. $2 million. In Claire's name. Not as inheritance. Because legally, you weren't entitled to anything. But as what he called an apology I don't deserve to make. Claire shook her head violently. I don't want it. I never wanted money. I just wanted to know he thought about me. The letter was enough. What happened next is something no one in the room, or watching at home, saw coming. Sarah stood up. She walked across the stage. And she sat down next to Claire. She didn't say anything at first. She just sat there. Then, without looking at her, she took Claire's hand. I don't forgive him yet, Sarah said, her voice raw. I might never forgive him. But you're not him. You didn't do anything wrong. She finally turned to look at Claire. And if he loved you even a fraction of how much he loved us, then you deserve to know that. David stood up too. He walked over. He didn't sit. But he put his hand on Claire's shoulder. I need time, he said. But yeah? What she said? Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. The audience was on their feet. Not cheering. This wasn't that kind of moment. Just standing. Witnesses to something real. Dr. Phil stood up from the floor. He looked at Elena, who hadn't moved. Elena, you've carried this secret for 43 years. You don't have to carry it anymore. Elena finally broke. She crossed the stage and stood in front of Claire. I'm sorry, she whispered. I made him choose. I told him it was me and the kids or you. I was young. I was scared. I thought I was protecting my family. But I was just destroying his. Claire stood up. And then, in a moment that would be replayed millions of times, she hugged Elena. 2 women. Connected by the same man. Divided by decades of secrets. Holding each other while they cried. Dr. Phil let them. No commentary. No psychobabble. Just space. When the show ended, really ended, after the cameras stopped and the audience filed out, Dr. Phil sat down with the family off camera. He connected them with a family therapist. He arranged for grief counseling. He made sure Claire had the resources she needed to process everything. But more than that, he did something he'd never done before. He gave them his personal cell phone number. I don't do this, he told them. Ever. But this is different. You call me if you need to. Any of you. 6 months later, the show did a follow-up episode. Sarah and Claire had met for coffee twice. David had sent Claire their father's favorite baseball cap, something Robert had worn every weekend for 20 years. Elena had started therapy to work through her guilt. They weren't a perfect family. They weren't even sure they were a family at all yet. But they were trying. And the envelope? The one Dr. Phil had held in that moment when everything changed. Claire had it framed. Not the letter inside, that was too personal, too raw. Just the envelope. A reminder that sometimes the hardest truths are the ones that set you free. Dr. Phil later said in an interview that this episode changed how he approached family secrets. You can't force healing, he said. But you can create the space for it. And sometimes, just sometimes, people are brave enough to walk into that space. The episode won a Daytime Emmy. But more importantly, it started a conversation. About secrets. About forgiveness. About what family really means. Because in the end, that's what Dr. Phil has always done best, not give answers, but ask the questions that matter. And then, in those rare, sacred moments, shut up and let people find their own way home. 3 years later, the impact of that episode still resonated. Sarah had invited Claire to her daughter's wedding. The woman who'd been a stranger now sat at the family table. David's kids called her Aunt Claire. It wasn't perfect. There were still hard days, therapy sessions, conversations that hurt. But they were building something real. Elena had written a book about carrying secrets. Not for money or fame, but because hundreds of people had written to her after the episode. People who were carrying their own crushing truths. She'd started a support group for families navigating similar situations. The letter, Robert's original letter to Claire, was donated to the Smithsonian's collection on American family history. A testament to the cost of silence and the power of truth. Dr. Phil still keeps their photo on his desk. Not the staged promotional shot. The real one. Taken backstage after the cameras stopped, when Elena and Claire were sitting together, holding hands, both their faces red from crying. Sarah standing behind them with her hand on Claire's shoulder. David off to the side, not quite ready to be in the frame but present nonetheless. "This is why I do the show," Dr. Phil said in a private moment caught by a backstage camera. "Not for the ratings. Not for the fame. For this. For the chance that maybe, just maybe, someone watching will find the courage to tell their own truth before it's too late." The envelope that started it all? Dr. Phil